Yes, please. Welcome everybody to the Safer Communities Subcommittee, 3rd of July 2023. The evacuation procedure, nick it off here. There is a location plan of the exits and assembly points situated on the doors of this room. Please familiarise yourself with it. On discovering a fire, please carry out the following: sound the alarm, attack the fire if possible and safe to do so using appliances provided. On hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following: exit the building by your nearest safe exit. All visitors report to assembly point G in the car park. All staff report to their designated assembly point on Walpack Way car park. Do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or fire brigade officer. Thank you. Right, apologies. We have Councillor Jackson and Councillor Gosling is subbing, and we have apologies from Councillor Humphrey. Okay, pretty happy? Thank you. Disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Do we have any? Thank you. Item 4, public participation. Have we had any notifications of any public participation? Item 5, minutes of the meeting of the subcommittee held on the 16th of March to be approved as a correct record, signed by the chairman. And you propose that proposed by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Gosling. Where are we? Okay, all those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. Item 6, a serious violence duty. We'll look at Julie for giving us the update on that, please.
Thanks, Chair. Okay, so this has actually gone to exec board, but it's really just to put information in to make people aware about in terms of what's going on in terms of the serious violence duty. So on the 31st of January, a new statutory duty came into effect as a result of the Police and Crime Sentencing Court Act. And it places a duty on specified authorities, and that's wider than in a lot of the police duties. There tend to be 4 or 5 kind of responsible authorities. This is a little bit wider. It does include things like schools and art. I'll look at that in a moment. But there's 3 key areas, and that's basically that we will need to undertake a strategic needs assessment. We'll have to identify and develop a serious violence prevention strategy, and also identify a delivery plan. So that's the requirements of the duty. In terms of the government, this is really their programme to address more widely the kind of prevent in terms of reducing serious across the UK, and to look at more of the causes for that violence and look at the consequences of violence, and look at ways in which we need to work as multi-agencies to address the problem. There was a bit more of a coordinated approach in terms of this agenda. There's one key kind of area that's going to be brought in, which will be new, and that will be the serious violence homicide review. And if anybody else is aware of domestic homicide reviews, it's much the same as that, but it will be relating to serious violence, and it will be about that learning around why that incident occurred, what could have been done to potentially prevent that from happening. So that will be part of that requirement. There is no lead in terms of who has to lead on this work, but as Warwickshire, we've decided to work together. The county are actually going to lead and make sure that we meet our statutory requirements. And there's in the document that you have attached, there's basically set out a framework between now and January next year in terms of what we need to do to meet those mandatory requirements. In paragraph 2.14, it just goes through there the kind of key things, like I said: strategic needs assessment, delivery plan, identification of a lead officer, that will be a county council officer, and then a training programme. Widening, we already have in Warwickshire basically a schools, it's called the whole schools approach. They're talking about widening that programme as part of this work. And then most important thing, identifying interventions, like having tailor-made interventions. And I think what we'll be saying in terms of North Warwickshire, we want them tailored to our local circumstances. So it's not about having generic kind of activities across the county, it's about having that local difference and addressing serious violence on a local level. So that's kind of the main kind of areas. The other thing that I wanted to highlight in 2.19, paragraph 2.19, there has been some allocated funding of £83,000, which is from the Home Office. This currently is being allocated to £10,000 per district, and £33,000 will be going to the county council to lead on this work and to develop further their whole school approach. So I just wanted to flag that up so people are aware of that funding. In terms of that £10,000, we have not identified anything to do with that £10,000 yet. So we've only heard probably within the last three to 4 weeks that money isn't available. And I think most importantly, we need to look at our data to look at what kind of key areas we need to be focusing on in terms of serious violence. And so there is further conversations to be had around that money. I think that was the kind of the key bits that I really wanted to point out. Like I say, there will be a training programme. There is no identified date. Again, it's work in progress at the moment, and I want to make people aware of that. And when we start considering our local delivery plan for Warwickshire, of course, that will be brought to this group of reports. At the moment, that strategic needs assessment has not been completed, and therefore we're not at a point of actually identifying. Any questions?
Councillor Gosling.
Is there funding for carrying out the strategic needs covered in the 10,000? Additional funding to actually run the operations behind it? So the
£10,000 would be 50 interventions.
So do we have to, is it for Warwickshire to find strategic needs assessment? Is that going to be,
yeah, so
we need to do that and commit?
Yeah, so how it's set up at the moment, the Police and Crime Commissioner fund an analyst at Warwickshire County Council, who's a community safety analyst who spends all their time looking at data. And so it's the community safety analyst who will prepare the strategic assessment. So as far as I'm aware, there's no additional funding required to do that piece of work.
I've got some comments.
Yeah, sure.
I obviously welcome any action on serious crime, serious violence, especially after the events in Hartshill, various other places. However, I think the beautiful glossy document with many stunning graphics probably costs more than allowed to the entire county to actually implement, which is frustrating to say the least. I also think that the massive scope of this document, and this is, we had this conversation similarly at Exec Board as well, so I'm going to echo a lot of what I said then. The massive scope of this, and especially I think, I'm just looking for a page, I'll find it in a moment. But there's such a broad stroke, so little resources and so little. It says that we are committed to it, but actually the commitment to it isn't there. The commitment is there in words, but the words are, it basically says that you need to fix poverty, you need to fix youth, you need to fix, broken homes, estranged parents, violence in the home, and the list of things which it lists as triggers to violence that this strategy is going to address couldn't be solved with 20, 40,000 times the funding that's been put behind it. And actually, some of those things, especially poverty, are actually getting worse every day. We're now up to, I think, a quarter of our children living in. And this is, I don't know, just lip service. It just doesn't strike me as being something that's deliverable by ourselves or by our partners. I think it's dumping a logistic responsibility on us, which isn't going to achieve anything. There isn't the funding or clarity behind it. I just think that with the broad basis of it, where do we even start? You know, I don't envy the people having to sit down and do the strategic needs assessment to say everything needs attention, and then being able to have £10,000 to fix it. So the list of risk factors was hyperactivity, guilt and empathy, maltreatment, exposure to violence, violent aggression, not having a positive attitude or a positive attitude towards delinquency, previous criminality, family poverty, parental separation, and it just goes on and on. Bereavement, homelessness, delinquent peers, peer rejection. It just goes on and on and on. And it just seems our schools run on these. Police don't have the capacity to enforce it as it is when we do have pockets of smaller crime, when we don't get a response. I just think that, yes, of course, we need to deal with serious violence, but this is a lovely report. There isn't the commitment to. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. 7 of 113 2.4. Fund a dedicated country to support all the specific partners to meet the duty. This approach is like prevent coordinated postal radio hosted by Warwickshire County Council. I'm a bit confused about that one, Julie, because surely they should be meeting the duty anyway without funding somebody to get them to meet that duty. And the other one, I think I did ask this at Accept, is where it's saying they're funding it in schools, and it said 8 schools through Warwickshire. And I think I did ask at the time then how many schools is in North Warwickshire. I believe it's just the 1. Would we be assured that, you know, they'll be moving it into more schools into North Warwickshire if it's working?
So in terms of this work, I mean, there's obviously, in terms of our current, we're not starting with a blank piece of paper, and obviously there's already a number of things, like we have antisocial behaviour meetings, we have problem solving meetings, so it's not like we're starting from a blank piece of paper, but there is a lot in this new act that is requiring coordination, and so we could all do this individually as districts and would be responsible for delivering the training locally, everything in terms of that mandatory requirement. And so the approach is that it's best that there's one lead, and so that is a funded post being coordinated by the county. And so at the moment what we've got is money from the Home Office has come down and funded that person to coordinate that activity. And then in terms of the £10,000, I probably should have made that more clear, that's the first amount of money, and I don't have a lot of background information about it, but that's the first amount of money that we will get. Start looking at interventions, so that should be around diversionary activity or education or whatever that we look at the data and say that's the most needed thing we need to start doing. But there should be money coming down in future years from the Home Office to do further work at a local level around these requirements. I suppose what I was, you know, and I'm fairly new to this as well, you know, I'm not that experienced, but what I would say is what this does is it probably puts a greater emphasis on this piece of work and looks at it in a more collective way, in a more coordinated way, as opposed to we look at all issues around crime and disorder across North Warwickshire as one agenda, and it's probably bringing a number of different kind of areas of that we need to kind of focus our attention on in a more coordinated way with our partner organisations. And I guess the difference is with a lot of the work we're doing, and what I was stating at the beginning, it usually includes fire and rescue, the county council and so forth. But with this particular new duty, it does include so the duty is exactly the same for the school as it is for us. And I think that's really helpful, particularly with kind of younger people. In terms of the funding, you said about the whole school approach. You're right. We have had work within Hartshill. I think originally the county council were going to work with Queen Elizabeth School, and I'm not clear why that never took place. And the aim is, with the funding that they've got, the 33,000, that they would widen that scope. And I think, you know, we obviously do want to be discussing about making sure it's proportionate across all the districts within Warwickshire. So I think it's a really valid question, but it is about just expanding what we already have within North Warwickshire and the other districts.
Thank you, Julie.
Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, really, it's just a few sort of observational points and questions, some of which you wouldn't be able to answer, but for the group sitting before us, I suppose it'd be good if we'd got to know. So section 60 is a dispersal of power issued by an inspector. Section 60, give them a map of a certain area, a specified amount of time, any group, if they return to that area, they're subject to either arrest or, if they're underage, taken home. Just wondered how many explored that tool, the early intervention, because obviously the tactic that you just explained is prevention and early intervention. But if that's in place in certain areas at certain times, not all the time, but it's used, that sort of thing is used as not a regular thing, but it's used in certain areas where there's been. Now my other point is, have we got a ASB car used? Do they have a dedicated and into 10 ASB events?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of section 60, concerning our antisocial behaviour, only monitor literally locations, case management, so victims, and then we look at particular individuals, and we look at all our different interventions and powers that we can use. And that's actually one that I'm not very familiar with. However, saying that, I do know there was an incident quite locally here, and there was some young people coming into the area, and I'm assuming, and I might be wrong, but I'm assuming it was section 60 that was used to, because I know they were told that if they come back into the area, they were going to be arrested.
That sounds like.
So it sounds like that. So I would say we do use it, but what I can do following this, find out a bit more and come back to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Any other? Not, I would like to move the recommendation as printed. Anybody like to second? Councillor Davey. All those in favour of the recommendation? Anyone against? Yeah, that appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Right, moving to the 7. The school partnership update. Julie.
Thanks, Chair. Especially for new councillors, just to give you a bit of background, because when I came into this agenda, it seemed very wide and there's a lot of meetings and I wasn't quite sure of my way through. So just to give you a bit of background, there's sort of 2 tiers to meetings. We have some local meetings and we have some county-wide meetings, and then as a district we have our own community safety strategy and a delivery plan attached to that. So that's really what this report is about, and what we're doing in terms of moving that agenda forward in terms of North Warwickshire and our work in the county in terms of Warwickshire. So just to highlight a few areas, what I've done is I set out kind of our key priorities, and then we received some data from the county analysts, and they highlight within that the areas of concern. And so what I've tried with this report, which is slightly different to previous reports, because I'm trying to find a way that's going to serve best for this group, but I've tried to identify where we've got areas of concern in terms of the community safety partnership and things that we should be concentrating on. And so on page 67, but it's 4.1, what I've highlighted there in terms of our report from last year. So we have quarterly reports about our community safety stats. And it's of no surprise that vehicle crime came up as a real issue. And kind of the kind of key area of concern was for Longley Ward. And then separately to that, and it's an ongoing issue, we have issues at Crawley Services. And primarily, there is some vehicle crime, but primarily around HGVs. And we have taken up various conversations. I do apologise, I actually made a mistake when I was rereading this report. It should have said, please see, operation reduce, not operation array. I got my operations mixed up there, so I do apologise. So I'll pick that up as we go through, but there was, we've had various operations over the last 12 months to literally address where we've got spikes in crime or ongoing crime. So, you know, so it was just to say that we know vehicle crime was an issue. We know we've got issues around HGV at Crawley Services, and we're trying to do various work around that. We know we also, at places like Coleshill Parkway, we had issues around, and I think still do, around car cannibals, where cars are being literally stripped. So for parts, for order, and so we've done various engagements events around that as well. So we've done quite a lot of work around vehicle crime, and we have seen reductions from those engagement activities. That has been positive. The other area is domestic abuse, and I attached in with your papers, and it was I had only just received it, was some data from again the community safety analyst, because we've heard at problem solving meetings, obviously there's an ongoing issue around domestic abuse. We are trying to understand what areas can we work on to start tackling the problems. And so basically we had this report prepared, and I circulated it with the minutes, with the agenda papers. And further work does need to take place. I haven't had a meeting, and we need to have further conversations. But the things around that report were there was peaks in summertime, there was peaks in domestic abuse around weekends where there's more contact with family members. We have seen, which is a positive thing, that there are referrals being made to refuge, because I think in the past, previous reports have said we've got really low numbers going to refuge, which means there was an education problem around making sure those referrals are being made, whether that's from from other agencies, or whether that was education just public-wide in terms of getting the message out there. So that was positive. There's quite a bit of information around hotspot locations, and as you imagine, our main residential areas. So the primary one is Addiston, then Coleshill, Polesworth, Dordon and Hartshill. And then I've just quickly put down some headlines which we need to look into further, but 50% of the violence with injury took place with people who knew one another, and I think that's something we know. It's often between family members or partners, most likely to happen in a private address, and with violence with injury, the common theme was alcohol and relationship issues of some nature. In terms of violence without injury, over a third were known to one another. Again, occurs at a private address. And common themes are around mental health issues and unwanted messages. There's this theme around stalking, unwanted attention, and that particularly plays out in terms of domestic violence without injury. So 6 recommendations were made on the back of that report attached, And in terms of this meeting today, what I just want to say around domestic abuse, further work needs to take place around that and to look at that. And again, this is where, you know, we can consider some of the serious violence money to do some work around interventions or education or particular pieces of work. This could form part of that work going forward. So that's just an example of how we could use some of the serious violence money. But I'm not saying that's what we do. And then other things I just wanted to highlight was is still really concerning about the number of killed or seriously injured on the roads in and around North Warwickshire. And again, it is a Police and Crime Commissioner priority to reduce the number of fatal or seriously injured by 50%. So one of the things I would like to do is have a further conversation with the Police and Crime Commissioner about focus on North Warwickshire and what will take place. And then the final area of concern was around exploitation. And it's recommended that the Community Safety Partnership focus on supporting schools and children who are excluded and absent from in the borough. And we've always started conversations around this following our knife crime event early on in the year. So I just wanted to highlight that, you know, we need to keep up that work and look at some other kind of key areas. So that was really around our performance in terms of the Community Safety Partnership, what we need to consider, what we need to do something more with. And then what you've got set out in the report is all the operations that have taken place, an overview of our problem solving meetings. And again, this is where we have spikes in criminal activity and we look at like quite quick return in terms of what we're going to do about it and find some interventions. I've also set out in the report about antisocial behaviour, and whilst we are seeing activities around pockets of issues around young people and antisocial behaviour, on a positive note, ASB is actually down. We're getting less and less reports at the moment, which is a positive thing. And I've put that in the report. I also identified I've done some consultation around the national ASB and did a return. And then the other kind of key things I really wanted to highlight was the upgrades to CCTV. So we've bought 6 new cameras. So we're replacing the really old cameras, more cameras in key sites that need improving. And the plan is to look at other bids going forward around safer streets funding, to look at other projects that we can. I think that's it for me. I think the rest of it's self-explanatory, except for the last part, which is paragraph 7, about community safety grants. It was something that I wanted to bring to your attention because it's very frustrating for me. We applied for 3 grants from the Police and Crime Commissioner funding, totaling £35,000. Last year we only had 8,000. 4 years ago we were getting £32,000. This year we didn't get any funding from the Police and Crime Commissioner. And they're saying that we're not meeting criteria for it. We don't meet criteria. So I'm flagging it up as an area of concern.
Chair.
So I just think that's something that should be of note. Really. Thank you.
Councillor Clues, Councillor
Chair, just on that note, I have looked through it and I can't find anywhere else as a reason why. And if I've missed it, I apologise. But through this board, Chair, could we ask Police Crime Commissioner for a full detailed report, why these have been turned down? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So there is a specific funding officer deals with it, and is the first name Precious? She is the funding officer. So could that specific question be fired to her, please?
I'd also like the answer.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I know what Philip Second will say. Refer back to Precious.
I won't like that.
Councillor Osborne.
It's going to echo really what Denise has just said,
Yeah.
they don't match the funding criteria.
Why?
Well, that's not a really good enough explanation at all. If we don't, we need to know the specific reasons why. Philip Seckham historically has lauded the success of the CCT. Great successes in Alistair. It seems to work well. Town council and all the other partners, the police have got a lot of confidence in it. Philip Seckham has advertised that fact time and time again, what good results it is, and it'd have been nice to see him support it other than just words, in a more proactive way.
I'll just pass a comment towards that. I'm on the police and crime panel at Warwick, and at the time I was a town councillor, and we pushed it time and time again with him, and got nothing.
Yeah, totally agree.
He uses it in all his statistics that
Yes.
the number of arrests, the number of proactive activities.
That's great.
But do you support it? They didn't get anything from it. Councillor Gosling, then Councillor Watson.
I just wanted to add, could we please express our deepest frustration with the decision that was made, and say that we are annoyed, but yeah, frustrated with the decision that's been made, because as you say, we've also missed out on PC grant for Addiston. We've also missed out on smaller, safer road grants in Arley and in Ansley. So there's been quite a lot of grants that our community has put forward to the PCC that haven't met criteria. So we'd very much appreciate knowing exactly what the criteria is and who is managing and what we need to look like in order to gain access to the cash.
Right, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of specific questions. On page 84 of the report, and it's good to hear you're conscious around vehicle crime and thefts from motor vehicles, because when I look at the stats, only 4 of our wards have actually improved. All of the others have either remained static or got worse. So it seems a big, and some of the numbers are linked to 34 to 82, 13 to 38. So they're not 1 or 2 increases, they're significant increases.
Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned it has improved. So obviously these are 22, 23 numbers. It'd be interesting to see what makes you think it's improving. Obviously in those stats, it doesn't necessarily look like that. Particularly in my own ward, it's a big problem. And that's the first point. And on the other one around ASBOs, how confident are we? Because you mentioned as the number of ASBOs being reported has gone, number of ASBOs has gone down, that people have just not given up reporting them, rather than actually being a genuine positive trend.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of a follow-up question to the car crimes sort of thing. Has the improvement happened because we're in the summer now? And let's face it, we know they mostly go out with dead knowledge and proud. And follow-up question to that would be, has there been any conversations about getting prepared for the next winter? Because it's got worse year on year. I mean, last year they were literally breaking into the same van twice. And then they nicked a van. The guy when he got it back, and they nicked it. So as it's like, we know it's not bad now. It's going to get worse. Are the police doing anything for the next cycle of break-ins?
Can I just come back on those?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? So in terms of the vehicle stats, and you're absolutely right, and I'm sorry if I've kind of given the impression that I'm saying the situation's got better, because I know it actually hasn't got better. But I guess the police had their priority as a force across Warwickshire was around vehicle crime. So they put a priority on that and did extra patrols. We haven't had a problem solving meeting this month, so at that meeting we would be discussing exactly this issue. So we would be talking about the current stats and their current priorities and what's happening. So unfortunately, Alison, the inspector, came along to the last meeting and is hoping to come to future meetings. inspector, and she would be able to tell you. So I can certainly come back to you on that. But yes, no, it's overall the stats are, you know, they correct in saying it hasn't improved. But what I think I was trying to say was, following engagement events that we did in certain locations, we saw improvements in terms of numbers going down. What I do also want to say is that I know the police arrested quite a number of prolific car thieves as well, one particularly at the Belfry, and I think one fairly local to Atherstone as well. And I think that also helps with some of our car crime numbers going down. So I think what I'm trying to say is we've had some successes and we've done some engagement events, but I think it is something we'll need to continually keep our eye on and monitor. And we're certainly still seeing the car cannibals and removing parts from cars across it nationally. So this isn't a long-term issue time. So that's on that one. In terms of just on antisocial behaviour, I was just that's the recording of all antisocial behaviour. So the numbers on all antisocial behaviour has gone down, but it doesn't mean in terms of the number of interventions and powers that we're using to tackle people's behaviour has gone down. So again, I can always report in meetings what powers and tools we're using to address, and we can give you the stats. I obviously can't give you cases. I can give you the overall stats if that's helpful for this group, and then that gives you a picture to see what powers and tools we're using to try and address.
I'll just ask one question. With the car thefts, is there any way that can we pull out the keyless theft? Because the advent of the keyless car, and does there need some intervention? Say that keyless cars aren't secure. I've got one and I know it's not secure, and I use alternative methods of visible security on it. Is that something that can be pulled out the keyless side of it? Because, let's say, some of these figures are pretty horrendous.
Yeah, I think if the inspector does do data analysis when we have the problem solving meetings, so when she'll look at every single incident and look at what the common theme is. Carless motor thefts is an issue. That is an issue, and then in terms of a lot of the prevention work we do, we would always be recommending that keys are put into I can't think what the pouch is called now.
Faraday.
Thank you. I should know, shouldn't I? But yeah, Faraday pouch. Yeah.
Or the fridge.
They cost £2 from say for what do they call it? The Yellow Caravan.
Yeah, the neighbourhood watch.
Watch. A couple of quid from them.
And just on the other side, I should have probably said this should have happened. So I do apologise if it didn't in this incident, but where like a vehicle crime has taken place and the police have been out to it, they usually should supply information in that neighbourhood and to the individual, and they often provide free van packs being issued to be used. So unfortunately I can't say what happened in that incident, but that is something that we try and do as general practice to try and prevent future crime.
Yeah, so just quickly, Byron will probably back me up on this. Firstly, weekly, you see ring doorbell footage in Dawn, the villages of people trying car doors, car handles, things like that, smashing the odd window to get stuff if they see valuables inside, or if people have unfortunately left the door open. Like Ray says as well, with more modern technology, when you look at the pattern on the ring doorbells, you can tell that they're driving from the village. They're doing that. It all fits in with the timeline. So I would hope that they've got an intelligent sort of helping doing what time. So it's not a police bashing sort of thing. It's just we're trying to give our residents some sort of reassurance, I suppose, that the police are out there and they're not just absent.
Well, a couple of things really. The first one was on page 67, under wounding offences, there's a reference to section 18 and 20, and there's a couple of other references to various sections. Can you clarify what the difference is? 'Cause as a newbie, I'm not quite clear. I wondered whether it might be possible to have like a glossary in future reports, if that's the type of thing, just to make it easy to understand.
Oh, the wounded offences. The other one,
Yeah, so what's the difference between section 18 and 20?
I did learn this at one point. I do apologise. I don't know. I'm
Okay.
just going to be honest.
Would it be possible to have a glossary going forward, type of thing?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I
It's the sort of thing
definitely
you
think.
can
Yeah,
reuse then once it's compiled. isn't it?
yeah, definitely. Let me. Yeah.
And then
Glossary.
the other one was more a comment, really. So in the report towards the end, I was particularly looking at 83, 84. But there's a real inconsistency to the way that the figures are being presented. So if you look at page 83, for example, it's got 22, 23 in the first column and then 21, 22 in the second column. And if you look at the next page, it's reversed and it's got 21, 22 first and then 22, 23. It'd be much easier to understand if it was consistent throughout the report.
Okay, I'll speak to the analyst because that they produce those county-wide, but for each district, so
Yeah.
I can speak to the analyst on that one. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gosling.
Thanks. I've got quite a lot to say, as usual. I am quite concerned. I love these new breakdowns, these hotspot breakdowns, but I am quite concerned by seeing yet again we've got 75% female victims and 77% male perpetrators. And I think that we really, really have to bring in kind of the gender specifics into our analysis of data if we're actually going to be able to look at any of these problems and actually solve them. Because I understand that, it then goes on to say that these are in the home or these are from somebody that they know. But I do think that that is a crucial thing to start clamping down on. And I'm also, I think, in those quite taken aback by the amount of repeat offenders. So kind of looking 27 repeats, 24% of the suspects have been known before for exactly the same thing, 57 repeats, 31%. We just need to be actually actioning the prosecutions in the first place. And I think where we were talking before about kind of having the statistics around what tools have been used, I do think that that's where we need to start going with the reporting of data in this board. We need to start knowing what's actually happened. We sit here time after time going through data and I've gone through almost page by page in the past and gone, what about this, what about this, what about this? And it's getting worse. Nearly every report, every statistic in here has got worse. So regardless of Operation Array or Operation Reduce, they're brilliant, but they're not achieving what we want them to achieve, and we need to stop sitting around talking about it if it's not going to have any actual impact. So we need to start looking, especially at these repeat offenders, the people that are known to have caused crime, people that are known to have been caused assaults and actual bodily harm, and why they are allowed and in a position that they can reoffend. And I think that it's just, and also 55% of victims, repeat victims, we need to be making sure that actually Refuge has got hold of these people and is doing what they need to do to support them. The hotspots is always a frustration because I know for a fact I've been with my local youth worker on the phone to 999 saying I have children in danger in this part of the moment and they don't connect. They haven't attended, and we talked about it with our PCSOs and we've talked about it afterwards, and the excuse was that there were no safer neighbourhoods in the building at that time. And I'm kind of like, you left a group of 20 children potentially in danger, the child with an air rifle on this particular occasion, and no police turned up. They phoned her at 11 o'clock at night to say, we are going to get back to you. And they're like, yeah, they've all gone home. We abandoned our session. We had to cancel, our asset, our planned activities, because there was a child with a gun physically threatening children. I thought, oh, well, it was only an air rifle. He probably wouldn't have done it anyway. It's like, that's just not good enough. And I don't even think because they didn't attend, but that's even in our statistics. And I think that that's happening far too often. And I totally understand the limited resources, but if we're going to use our business intelligence in order to address these issues and to protect our communities, then we have to have the right intelligence. in order to get on with the business, really. So that's some of my frustrations. Scrolling. I am generally quite shocked and would like more information about violence with and without injury and why we're seeing such staggering increases in both of those. And we were told originally that this had most of these were to do with domestic violence or happened in the home, or again were repeat instances. So they were things that had taken place between specific individuals that were repeating. But it's just not good enough to be having it repeating. And we are again told small glimpses of the statistics show that we've got improvements, like in section 20 at the moment, but then it spikes up again. And it doesn't seem to be having any long-term impact, having short-term interventions, but we're not seeing any long-term outcome from it. And I just think that if we actually have a tracker showing any of our ward positions, you know, I think Arlie's gone from red to green to red to green and is bouncing all over the place, and there's no consistency or patterns to it. There is no intelligence to our understanding of the pattern. And I think to echo what Councillor Osborne was saying, every morning there are 10, 20 people walking around with various devices trying to capture keys outside people's houses. And we've got those images, we've got that footage, we've got that. There doesn't seem to be the targeted movement, or maybe there is, maybe we're just not aware of it. It'd be nice to be aware of that. And I just think we need to be more aware of what action is actually happening in order to reduce this crime and in order to address these things and keep us safe. CCTV is another specific issue that, you know, I very much welcome having CCTV, but we were told in February that there would be CCTV put in Arley at the park, where there would be antisocial behaviour and potential Class A drug dealing, and it's still not there. And it's, you know, there's been delays, there's been this, there's been that, but at the end of the day, we just keep being, you know, running around in circles. And I'm sure the police are just as frustrated as me, because they're running around in the same circles, waiting for whoever's in charge of the cameras to deliver the cameras and to get the evidence and to do it. So yeah, some of my frustrations. Thank you. Oh, sorry. On page 73, it says that refuse are going to be providing a variety of training sessions, whereas there's refuge. Thanks.
You passed your test, you found it.
Did I? Thank you. Do I get brownie points and gold stars?
Councillor Clues.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, hotspot locations for the domestic use. I've noticed that you've got Lung Street, Atherstone, I Street, Portsmouth, and I Street, Coleshill. So just to me, that indicates it a little bit when they're out the house. So they're either come out of a pub or out of a restaurant, or they're walking down the road. Because I can't believe there's that many houses on all the I streets where that is happening.
Which page? Because I think this is about, is this the bit that it's actually saying that is about the residential areas and the domestic abuse taking place in those locations in the household? Because I think they are saying, sorry, do you know what page it's on?
Yeah, 94. So it gives you the other places, which I wouldn't like, you know, I'm not going to say, but then it does say Lung Street, Atherstone. Now, Lung Street, Atherstone, we have got some flats, not many houses. Then it's got I Street, Portsmouth. I don't know how many flats or anything. And then it is also got I Street, Coleshill. So to me, is that still in the house, or is that indicating it's when they're coming out of the restaurant or out of the establishment?
Well, I can certainly, what I can say on the back of this is that I can certainly, I haven't had a meeting yet with the analysts who pulled this together, and I would really like Refuge to be there as well as part of the meeting, plus some other key partner agencies who are involved with this work. So I think we need to have a multi-agency meeting to discuss this, and on the back page of that report is the recommendations, clearly identifying key things that they're saying around hotspot locations, talking about
just seems weird, it's all the I streets.
So they, I mean, I'm assuming the analysts will have absolute detailed information that obviously can't be publicly shared, but I'm hoping that, you know, I can have a meeting and we can discuss it further. So if you've got any specific questions that we're above and beyond what we've discussed today, please let me know.
Yeah.
And send me an email, and then I'll set up a meeting and we can discuss it
Thank you,
further.
Chair. I'd just like to say it's a very detailed report. Thank you, Julie. And also, just on my behalf, if you could thank our local police, because I think they do a brilliant job for what time and that many we've got.
Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, so just picking on a point Councillor Goslin mentioned, I'd like to propose that we as a committee find out why firearms offence was to have a air rifle is not on personal property without landowner permissions. Firearms offence to not know what dealt with. We should send a letter to PCC and find out. It's a matter of urgency, because that's terrible.
He was below the age of understanding.
They still should have attended. They still should have attended with a firearms officer to make weapons safe and confiscate it.
Absolutely.
Can we follow that up, Julie?
If you could send me further details.
Absolutely. It is known, we have been following.
You engage with Inspector Wiggy?
No, I haven't, because it wasn't my do, as it were, but I am supporting the people who were hosting it. They have made further representation and had a meeting with the PCSOs, and they were going to take it away and get back to them. And I said if they weren't satisfied with their findings, that I would be happy to ask. Wait on that.
To Inspector Wiggy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Sergeant Scalzi?
Yeah, we're in regular contact.
Julie? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Go on.
And it's something I know we've been talking about, Chair, and discussing with the police. One of the things we are really keen to look at is about how we ensure local voices are heard. And again, it's all well and good having data that we can, that we look at on a monthly basis. We do that on a monthly basis, but what we're saying is that we're really want to place more importance in terms of that loss of the area forum role, where you were able as localities to identify your priorities. So we're trying to find out a way in which we can make that work on a local level in the current kind of way of working, without duplicating meetings that already take place, and so we can have formulated local priorities that we can be, you say we did kind of scenario. So I just wanted to flag that up to say, obviously I can't ever talk on behalf of the police. I can only talk in terms of our partner or our partner agencies in terms of community safety. But in terms of the police and the community safety partnership, we are keen to look at how we can have better ways of communicating and being accountable for our local priorities. And I think that's a lot of what you.
If I could just
Yeah, of course, yeah.
2 minutes. But expanding on what Julie's just said, is that saying I wasn't at the town council, but no longer. But Atherstone Town Council have the police there every time. Now, I believe parish councils have an equity, because I'm sure we all get it here. You'll get an email, you'll get a phone call. Joe Bloggs is round the corner threatening his wife with an hammer, or instances like that. Now that comes in at the parish level, and I believe that the parish councils have got an equity in starting the ball rolling, getting it to go up then into the hierarchy. So my own personal thing, and using the Atherstone Town Council as a bit of a benchmark, because it works, is to try and encourage the police and the town and parish councils to engage, so that the local issues are talked about locally to the local SNT, who then can progress it if need be. And when we have that meeting with them, that's certainly something that I'd like to explore. Because the area forums, I think they run their course years ago, and got a bit of a reputation for nobody apart from councillors turning up. So my thing is that the parish councils have got an equity, got to use that to, to feed the information up the tree. Councillor Davey.
Community don't come to parish councils, this kind of thing. They, being a borough councillor and a parish councillor, they, well, not in my ward anyway, tend to go to straight either to the borough council or Facebook. So when there's issues like that you're talking about, it going to the parish councils first. In my experience, that's not the case.
I mean, the normal procedure is that the borough councillor attends their local parish meeting.
Borough councillor and parish councillor are maybe my ward different from others, but
The usual procedure is the borough councillor attends the parish council meetings. As I say, that's my feeling, that there's an equity there, that at the lower level, it's a case of then pushing it uphill into the appropriate ones through the local SNTs. Councillor Dawson.
We find it quite difficult to get our SNTs to come to our parish council
Well,
meetings.
this is one of the
So
things
it
that I
is
want to try and
quite, yeah.
encourage.
But again, and to carry on with what you were saying about reporting, and so at the moment the form, the online form to fill in an antisocial behaviour or a 101 call says at the start of it that it's 15 to 20 minutes long. I've had 4 residents tell me that they've waited over 40 minutes on 101. We've had the police chief commissioner here before now. All calls are answered within 30 seconds. And it's just a joke. It's just not true. People do not have access to their police services. There's no police stations. You can't walk in. There's nobody to talk to. And it's almost impossible, or just what I consider to be mental torture, spending 40 minutes on hold to try and get through to somebody who isn't specialised in your area. And the best that they can do is say, I'll try and get somebody to get back to you. There really needs to be a better way for people to engage with their police if we want local intelligence to support dealing with crime. And I don't think it's happening at the moment. And I think Facebook, when we, in the past, I think it was Chris Bell, one of the previous inspectors, that actually was trying to set up a quick response. So it was about Facebook, and it was about, not posting on Facebook, but you message your local neighbourhood team. Next door is a new one, Instagram and things like that, and the police are using it to communicate with us, but we can't use quick and simple methods to communicate back. I was reporting a trial bike on a field a few weeks ago, and literally walking out of school with my child, and by the time I've done it, it's gone. And it's just ridiculous, the amount of time that it actually takes to report something, the amount of detail that you have to put in, and literally it could have been a bright orange bike entered the field here, with all the information that I really need to share. Whereas actually I've got to put in everything about myself and, everything about where I live and where I'm standing and find my location on a map. And it is just ridiculous, the amount of information. And most people do not do it. And we don't have the intelligence and the information that we need because there are barriers to people. And I just think that it's essential that we need to do it. I actually put my hand up originally to talk about exploitation, which was ages
Can
ago.
I just
now,
answer
but
your question on that?
yeah.
That's something that we bring up at the Police and Crime Commissioner meeting every time, is the response.
Yeah.
His latest response: I've employed 15 more operators. That's his standard response. If you break that down, because there's 365 days a year, 168 hours in every week. If you break it down, it's about 2 extra bums on seats each shift. It looks a great figure to say we've put 15 in. When you take the fact that everybody's got the holidays, sickness and everything, you've got an average of about 2 bums on seats each time. So yes, we raise it, every single meeting. And when he told us one that the response time was 8 minutes. And at the end he said, well, what do you think the rest of the panel? And I said, well, if the response time was 8 minutes, I said, my ward members would be ecstatic.
Absolutely.
So because you're looking at, as you say, half hour, 3/4 of an hour, whatever.
Most
And
of
still
them
not-
phone down.
And still,
Just give up.
yeah, and they don't even record that, the number of
No.
calls that drop out. So, I mean, it is something that's raised time and time again. And they've even said, can you get this system where, you're number 131 in a queue?
We'll call you back.
Or, yeah. I'll cut across Councillor Gosling.
So, well, I was going to go on.
Yeah.
I do apologise. The exploitation section, which is 68 of 113, and just reflecting again, we still have not only the highest absentee and persistent absenteeism and exclusion rates from school in the county, but I believe it's actually in the country as well. I believe that we are one of the first in the country because of 2 of our schools are really, really high up. And I think that this report and the way it's kind of framed really shows that we are not only letting these children down in their education, but we are putting them at significant risk of harm. That these are already vulnerable children that maybe have mental health issues or have experienced trauma, and they're not getting the support. They're not in their safe environment. They're not at school, which probably means if they've got working parents, they're out on the streets, and they are exactly the kind of victims that exploitative adults will be looking for. And I just think that this has been a theme for at least the past year, if not 2 years, in this board. And I just think we really, really need to start tackling it and start getting something more done about it.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, that's a follow-up. I think the perception problem in Warwickshire is atrocious. I don't even argue with the residents now when they say that no one's going to turn up. Who cares? I just say, well, way it is now. It's mental to even tell them things are going to get better. I think the PR problem, perception problem now is so bad. It's start to get better tomorrow. It's going to take so long to penetrate through that. That has increased apathy. I think it's probably affecting our statistics as well. It just cannot be bothered. Don't even tell them to do anything. So it's best to think. I personally think I'm sort of looking, telling them to do it. It's like being stuck on the phone for an hour. So it's not anything we can do. But I think we sort of be looking at the language that we use maybe and say this is don't just pick up 999 for emergencies and try to go towards the website. So it's just silly to even point people in that direction now. Council.
I think it's just something that Julie and I will pick up with the Alison when we meet her, because obviously to get a crime sorted, first of all, it's got to be reported.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing at the moment, is the reporting of it.
Yeah.
Whether it be 101, whatever. The key thing is the reporting. If you don't report it, they can't act on it.
Yeah, but if you can't report,
Oh, yeah.
and I think it's trying to make point people towards the website might be the best way to do it. At least then you'll crank along.
I did pass a comment with that, because it did say that when the one operators aren't busy, they go on the website then. So effectively, the website is secondary to the other. So I think there's a lot of questions still to be answered. So I think that Julie and myself will have with Alison, looking at the reporting side of it is a key element. Julie?
Can I just come back in on that? And I think that there's the 2 different things, like reporting of crime, in terms of links with your police officers and PCSOs. I just wanted to remind people there are those local email addresses, which is in the newsletters that come out. So, obviously I'm not the other end of it, sending the queries or concerns in, but I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that there is also that way of contacting your local PCSOs and PCs. I don't know if Jodie's got any experience of that, but I just wanted to flag that
usually
up.
CC'd on most of my emails to those people.
And the other thing I just wanted to say is, I think, in the world that we're living in now, I don't think meetings is the only way in which we need to hear the views of local views. So I think we can be exploring digital means as well. So it's finding a way that we can make it work and make sure that we can be accountable. So I think, and I hear that over and over again in terms of all the questions, it's about accountability, isn't it? So I think we need to look at that in terms of whatever options we come up with. But I just wanted to reassure you, there is a want and a desire, particularly from the police, to hear local people's views and to be more accountable and say, these were your priorities and this is what we did as a result of it.
Councillor Close, just say your hand.
Just
Councillor Close.
every
Yeah.
the phone line system.
Yeah, once you get through.
Yeah, once
Fantastic.
yeah, and the people that turn up, the officers that turn up are great, and the PCSOs are great. It's the getting
I
through
think
someone.
that's a common theme, Councillor Phillips. That the officers themselves do a sterling job. Okay. If that's the case, it's 7:35. Declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Do you have to, you can move this thing, go, do the.
Vote on it.
What, which resolution?
There's a
Item
resolution
7.
on that one.
On that, is that?
Going to site 7, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll move the resolution from the chair. Second. Seconded by Councillor Osborne. All those in favour? Anyone against? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Now, 7:36 then. Declare the meeting closed.